Alright guys, SuperShafty here. We are doing some product testing. We are comparing some axle housings. Alright, we've got our SuperShafty CP44 Capra axle housing, and we're going to be comparing that against a KYX axle housing that we purchased off of eBay. And we're going to show you guys the difference between them and let you guys make an informed decision based on the test that we ran, why we think that you should buy the SuperShafty housings instead of a cheaper alternative. Alright, so the KYX housing is what we got, and we're going to test that against ours. This KYX housing is a cast housing with a couple machined bits in the bearing pockets. And the SuperShafty axle housing is made out of 70-75 aluminum, and it is 100% machined. There is no cast anything here. Alright, this starts as a solid block of 70-75, and it gets machined down to this this housing like this. This starts as liquid metal, and they pour it into a form, and then they machine a couple pieces in here to make sure that the bearings fit the way they should. Alright, so we're going to show you why the machined 70-75 is better than the cast housing instead. Alright, so we realize that this is SuperShafty doing product testing on SuperShafty products. Alright, so you can take that for what it's worth. Alright, if anybody says they can conduct their own product testing and not be a little bit biased, they're full of it. Alright, so we're just gonna have some fun in the shop and show you guys what we found out. Alright, and then you can make your decision based on that, whether you want to buy our housings or not. That's completely up to you, and you can have your opinion, and you can tell me that I'm full of it, and that's okay too. But it was fun, and here's the video to show. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Alright, SuperShafty fans, we are doing some video for destructive testing today. Alright, so we've got this KYX Chinesium housing, and we've got the SuperShafty CP44 housing, and we've got this digital scale and this nice workbench, and we're going to do some destructive pull testing on these things till we snap the housing somewhere, whether it be the portal box comes off, or whether the housing snaps up here next to this intersection with the truss on there, with the truss on here. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to find out. So we're going to go ahead and start with this KYX housing. It is significantly heavier than the SuperShafty housing, but this one's made out of like a pot metal, and this one's made out of 70-75 aircraft grade aluminum. So we're going to see how much difference in force we can put on these things before something fails. So we're going to get this thing clamped down to the table, and then we've got this chain hoist and a digital scale to put up to 500 pounds of force on the housing until something fails. So we're going to clamp it to the housing. We got some paracord. We're going to wrap it around the end, the portal box, and then we're going to start pulling upwards until something fails. Alright, let me get this strapped down. Pause. The KYX housing clamped down to the bench, and we've got the digital scale here. We got the paracord wrapped around the end of the housing here and attached to our digital scale. Our digital scale is reading 0.2 pounds of negative force right now. But that's as close as we could get this thing to zero with the little bit of tension we had to put on here to get it. But 0.2 pounds is nothing. So we're going to start cranking on it, sir, and we'll go until we see some failure here. So we got 10, 11 pounds of force, 12, 18, 20. Go a little bit slower, Kevin.
Yep.
33 pounds of force. 38 pounds of force. 45 pounds. 51 pounds. We're starting to see a little bit of deflection here in the axle housing. 50 couple pounds. 61. 65. 71. Alright, it's starting to flex up pretty good. It might be hard to see that on the video, but this end of the housing is deflecting up quite a bit. We got 76. 80, 83. We're putting pressure directly against the truss here, so the truss is working for the housing instead of pointing it down and pulling against the truss. 100 pounds. 115. 120. The housing's just bending now. 140. 150, 60, 160. And we went pop. We went pop. It came out. Oh no. What's the housing look like? So it actually doesn't look terrible.
It's got a little bit of bow.
Alright, let's pause it and get set back up again. Alright, we are back rolling again. We got it set up with a double clamp this time so we don't lose the housing. And we moved the paracord here to just inside the portal box so that it doesn't slip off the end, because I think that was the point the last time. It slipped off the end and kind of kicked it out to the side. So we're reset and ready to start again. Alright, pull away.
So you want me to build it up quicker?
Yeah, get back up to where we were. And alright, you can go just a little bit slower from there.
So we're at 90.
We're at 90, 100 pounds, 120, 135, 147, 165, 170. The tube is definitely starting to come up. 200. 215, 225. The tube's really starting to deflect up now, but it hasn't cracked yet. 245, 250. 260. 255. And there we broke. It snapped right at the where the tube meets the center section. Let me take it off of here and show it in the camera. Alright, so our failure is right at the axle where the axle tube meets. It's out a little bit, you know, not exactly where I expected it to fail. I expected it to fail at that seam right there. But surprisingly, this is pretty thick material there. But it had quite a bit of deflection up here before it actually snapped. But we'll have to look at the replay, but I think it was around 270 pounds-ish. Yeah. So we're going to reset things here, and we're going to get the SuperShafty housing out on the table over there, and we're going to repeat the process. All right, ready? Here we go. All right, so we're all clamped up again. We've got a fresh SuperShafty housing in here, and we've got the scale at 0, and we hooked it in just the same way that we had the other housing, and we're ready to start cranking. All right. 40, 50, 60, a little bit slower, Kev. 80, 85, 99, 120, 120, 130, 140, 145, 155, 165, 170. Starting to see a little deflection in the tube. 175, 200, steady, 215, 225, 245, 265, 270, 285, 300, 305, 325, 330, 350, 360, 368, 369, 370, 380. Oh, and we lost the paracord. The paracord broke. We were at 380 pounds, and the double line of paracord broke before the housing. And the housing is still straight across after almost 400 pounds of force. It came back to almost straight across. There is a tiny amount of deflection here, but still pretty straight across. Definitely still usable. All right, let's triple up this paracord and go at it again. Hit pause. All right, we are back rolling again. We got it reset. We got triple the paracord on here now, so hopefully we won't have a paracord failure. All right, let's crank her up. All right, there's 100. 150. 175, 180. 200. 220. 230. 250, 265, 275, 299, 315, 320, 325, 345, 350. 380. There's where we had the failure before. 390. 400. 415. 420. 425. 430. 450. Whew. We got quite a bit of deflection, but no pop yet. 465. 476.
So our scale maxes out at 5.
Our scale maxes out at 500. 490. 501. We can't pull the scale any higher. But there's 500 pounds of force on there. And we got a little bit of deflection here. All right, release the tension off of there. Let's see how far it comes back down. Oh man.
That was a long way.
It came way back down. All right, let's take this off of here. Let me unclamp this thing. Man, we got just a little bit of deflection here, but let's focus on here. This would definitely still be a usable axle. After 500 pounds of force on there, you can look down through there. It is barely up on this end, but barely up on this end. This would definitely still be usable housing. That right there, folks, that's bomb-proof shit. All right? This is why you pay $139.99 for this housing instead of the $50 housing from somebody else or $80 housing from somebody else. Quality materials, bomb-proof, it's proven right there. Twice the amount of force on there, and we could have kept going. We could still use this axle housing. I bet you I'll put a set of gears in it. It'll still spin. I'll do that tonight for you guys. All right? Here we go. Thanks for watching, and you can check these out on the SuperShafty website. Just search for CP44. All right, those are the bomb-proof Capra axle housings made out of 7075 with the SuperShafty name on it. All right, thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. All right, now we've got, let me bring the camera over here and show. This is the KYX housing that we broke doing the pressure test over there, and Kevin's gonna hit on this portal box and see how it fares. All right,
You ready?
yep. One hit, one hit, and that thing came right off. Where'd it go?
Over here.
I see it. Knocked it right off the end of the housing. All right. So, after we did the other testing, we're going to see if we can take the portal box off of that axle with the mallet. All right, so we got the axle housing chucked into the vise there, and Kevin's going to give her a couple good hits and see if the portal box will come right off the end of the housing. So we got the SuperShafty axle housing in there, 7075 CP44 housing. All right, ready? Go. You got to hit it. Nope.
It's just spinning it. That's in there tight too.
I tightened it down.
Oh, it's in there tight.
All right, hit it again. Oh.
Oh, that's where that.
That was the failed one.
Yep.
Alright. So this one, this is the one that we were testing in the hydraulic press, and it was actually cracked. It was actually cracked in here beside the center chunk, but you can look and see where Kevin was hitting it on the portal box here.
Let's clamp it in there again.
Let's clamp it in there, broken. Alright, pause this a second. Now we got this SuperShafty housing chucked in the same vise, the broken housing, and Kevin's going to give it a couple whacks and see if he can get that portal box to come off like the KYX one.
Damn it.
Alright, let's rechuck it. Alright, we got take 3 here. We got the SuperShafty housing. It won't focus. Why won't it focus?
It's hot in here.
Yeah, it is hot in here. Alright, there we go. We got SuperShafty housing chucked in the vise again, and go ahead and hit it for the 3rd time. It's just spinning in the vise.
Ah, I missed it. I don't want to hit the vise. I just can't do nothing with it.
Alright, let's chuck it in here straight up and down. Alright, here, let me pause this. Alright, so we got it rechucked in the vise. I just want to show you guys. He's hammering on this thing. It is taking a beating from the mallet here. And then it is holding strong. It's just coming right out of the vise. He's hit it good. He's hit it good. But all right, so we got it chucked in the vise here with the pumpkin down underneath of the vise, and it up and at an angle a little bit. So hopefully it won't rotate this time. But all right, give it another hit. Oh, there, it finally came off. Finally came off. It took some massive abuse, but focus on the housing there. All right, there she be. Finally came off, and it took the inside of the portal box with it. It took the whole bearing seat and everything out of the portal box with it, instead of the other one that it cracked right where did it go? It cracked right where the tube met the portal box itself. Different failures, but still really impressive. But look at that portal box compared to the other one. It took one hit right there and came right off. Where's that one? This one took some massive abuse on there before it separated. Pretty cool. Alright guys, destructive testing on SuperShafty CP44 housings. I think that'll conclude the testing for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Alright, SuperShafty fans. So today I've got the housings, the rear housings that we did the testing on yesterday. And so the KYX housing was the one that snapped with 200 and something pounds of force on it. This is the SuperShafty rear housing that we put over 500 pounds of force on this end, and today I'm going to try and assemble it with some brand new stock parts along with some TGH gears, just to see if after we put 500 pounds of force on the one end of this thing, whether we can get it to go back together or go together. This was brand new out of the package, but get it to go together and spin up without doing anything to it after we put the force on the one end of it. So you can still see that it has a little bit of a bow to it. You know, the center is down and this end is up from the original straight one. Excuse me. So I'm going to get a measurement on that just to see how far it's out. But let me try and put these shafts and the gears in here, and we'll see if it spins up. And if it spins up, then I'll measure it. If it doesn't spin up, I guess I'll measure it then too. But so all right, you just go ahead and take this one apart real quick and put the gears in it and the axle shafts, and see if it'll spin up after we put over 500 pounds of force on the end of this housing. So that was a little tight. The center section was kind of tight in there, and you can see the marks on the housing here from having it clamped into the table, but still looks like it's in pretty good shape after putting 500 pounds of force on it. So we'll see. We'll get the gears in here and then give it a spin, see if she spins up. This is as much as a surprise for me as it is for you guys. So I'm gonna give you the honest results here with no skew. Try and be as fair and honest as possible. So you guys can't, oh well, you're just biased. You're just biased. I don't think so. I'm trying not to be anyway. I am biased that I like my products, but anybody that makes their own stuff is going to be a little biased about that. But I gotta go get a driver. All right. Just had to go get a driver off my other bench. So I had somebody ask me the other day, do you put Loctite on the ring gear bolts? And the answer to that is definitely not. Especially with these AR-44s, there are six bolts holding this ring gear onto this little spool, and it does not need Loctite. If you put Loctite on these little 2 millimeters, they will never come back out. So please, if you're putting together AR-44 and even AR-60 ring gear bolts, don't use Loctite on them. Just give them a nice snug, and that's all you need. There's 6 of them on there. Even if one backs out a little bit, you're not going to hurt anything. But put all 6 in kind of loose, and then go back in, give them a snug. You can easily snap these things off, so definitely don't go too tight. We're using Jim's bearings here at SuperShafty. We use Jim's bearings for all of our production parts, as well as what we provide to our customers with their parts. They get sent out with all of our axles. They go in all of our transmissions. So while I'm doing this, I'll give you guys a little tip. This the big bearing in the center housing tends to be kind of tight, and if you have a problem getting that in there straight, put the bearing in on the outside first, and then put your pinion in there. And with the pinion, this pinion bearing on the outside, it'll help you get the pinion bearing on the inside in there nice and straight, so you can just give it a push, and then it'll go in, and the double bearing helps keep everything straight for you. All right. So I'm not going to be putting this one together with grease, just so it's not going to be a truck that it's not going to be an axle that I put in a truck and run. So I'm not putting it together with grease, just so you're not like, oh well, he's not put grease in it, why not? But with this axle with the little bit of a bow to it, this is just for testing purposes. It's not something I'm going to put in a truck and run. Hopefully I'm doing this in frame enough. I don't have the camera turned around so I can see what's going on. So other than this being tight, I kind of have to push it to get it in the housing. I haven't really noticed anything yet on putting this thing together that it's out of whack. Alright, so another thing I'll talk about real quick. This pocket on the top outside edge of the stock axial housing does not get a bearing. So you don't put a bearing there in a stock housing. Alright, it looks like you should put a bearing there. The pocket is deep enough for you to put a bearing there. But once you get the axle shaft and slide the axle shaft down in the housing, the axle shaft is going to stick out just a little bit too much so that you're not going to be able to get this. Let me adjust the camera real quick. So the axle shaft is going to stick out just a little bit too much that you're not going to be able to get this cover on once you put the cover on and the gear in place. But on the CP44 housings, this new batch that we just got in, we did machine this bearing pocket just a little bit bigger than stock axial and the version 1 of the CP44 housing, so that you can put a 5x11x4 bearing in that pocket. If I can get it tight. But there is room now to put the bearing in this top pocket. Alright, so we made this bearing pocket just a little bit deeper so that your axle shaft, when it has this taper on the end of the axle shaft, it allows you to keep that taper and not have to grind on the shaft or anything in order to run just a standard 5x11x4 bearing on the axle shaft here on the inside of the taper. All right, so that was a change to version 2 of the CP44 housings. All right, so when you buy the CP44 rear housings from us, they come with a set of bearings like this from Jim's Bearings, but they come with 2 extra bearings in here now, so that you can put that bearing into the axle housing where it looked like there should have been a bearing, but there wasn't, and you couldn't run one before unless you ran the 5x11x3 bearing, which is a thin one. And even then, if you had a big taper on your axle shaft here, you still might even have to grind the taper down just a little bit to get that 5x11x3 bearing in there. But now with the new housing, you won't have to grind on that taper anymore. All right. So this axle shaft was a little bit tight to go in there, but I got the bearing, and you can see that the bearing sits down in there, where before, when you put this in, all right, go back together. Before, when you put it in, the bearing would sit flush with the rest of the case there, like that. But now we made this bearing pocket a little deeper so that you can push it in, and that taper, once you put the gear on there, it is flush with the housing. I don't know if you can see that or not, but the taper on the axle shaft is flush with this part of the housing and not sticking out from that, which resulted in not being able to put this gear cover on all the way before. But all right, so I got one axle shaft in there, and it was a little tight to get it in there, but it went. And now that it went in, it goes in and out just fine. Put the other side in. And that side went in just fine. All right, so let me put the other bearings. Oh, so that side just slid right out. Let me put the other bearings and the shafts in here. Oh, I lost a screw. This is not my normal workbench for putting stuff together on. I don't have my cowl RC mat on here. TGH standard replacement stock gears. These are the 1223s. The stock ratio. We also have the wild overdrive and the mild overdrive available, and those are 20 something percent and 30 something percent of overdrive. But so the stock ratio is in stock right this second, and we are expecting the overdrive, the mild, and the wild to be in next week. But they are available for pre-order on the site right now if you want to order them. And they do work on the Capra as well as the SCX 10.3. And our brass knuckles and the aluminum knuckles for the Capra, they're in stock as well, and they work on the 10.3 as well as the Capra. We have them in stock. Alright folks, so this looks like it's going together after putting 500 pounds of force on this thing on our test the other night. Had one little hiccup getting the axle shaft in the first time, but that might just been not getting everything aligned properly. But went together. Oh, the bearing fell out. Yep, fell out again. There we go. Alright folks, she is together. Got 2 screws left here, and then we'll see if it spins. So this is the axle that went to undergo the force pressure that we put directly on the end of the portal box here. We lifted up on this portal box with 500 pounds of force, and she spins. It's a tad tight, but I can still spin it by hand. Look at that, guys. That is awesome. She's a little tight. But after putting 500 pounds of force on one end of it, where this KYX housing disintegrated at 200 and something, 280 I think it was, this thing spins nice and smooth, and she's even loosening it up. It's even easier to spin it. So look at that. That's amazing. That's amazing. I am super impressed with that. Alright guys, thanks for watching. This is episode 2 of our destructive testing. And after we put 500 pounds of force on the end of this axle, she still goes together and spins by hand. Alright? If that's not bomb-proof shit, I don't know what is. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. All right. So, recap for you guys. Thanks for watching the video to this point. So I just wanted to summarize it for you here at the end. So we did some destructive testing. I did conduct the tests myself. I did have the help of a friend. And we went down to his shop and we used the toys in his shop to destroy a couple axle housings. And showed you the guys the video of it. Sure, it might be a slightly biased test. I can't say that, you know, conducting product testing on my own products, I would be 100% unbiased, and I realize that, and I know you guys do too, and that's okay. So you saw the video, you can make your own conclusions, you can completely disregard anything that we have to say, and go and buy whatever housing you want, or you can listen to what I did, you know, test and show you guys and make an informed decision based on that. And that's all that we're after here. And it was fun. So, in summary, we bought KYX housing and we strapped it to the table and start putting force on the end of the portal box in an upward motion in line with the truss. So we weren't shock loading it, which is the easiest way to break a cast housing, is shock loading it. But we wanted to see just how much force it would take applied in a constant steady motion to get this thing to break. And we got it to snap here in the center with about 280 pounds of force. And that was in a slow upward motion on the portal box until it did snap. And when it snapped, it went boom and, you know, went flying across the shop and came out of the clamps and everything. But we did the same test with the SuperShafty CP44 housing. We put it on the bench and we maxed out the scale at 500 pounds of force. And, you know, so, you know, it shows that this has a little bit of a bend to it. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but you know, both of the portal boxes are up just a hair from where they would normally be. But this was after putting 500 pounds of force on the end of the portal box, just like we did the KYX housing, and it didn't break. We maxed out the scale. We actually broke a double wrap of paracord before we maxed out the scale, but we had to do the triple wrap of paracord to get the scale maxed out to 500 pounds. But anyway, we did that, and once we released the 500 pounds of pressure, it came back to pretty close to flat. So I wanted to take this home and test it and put gears in it. So we put gears and shafts. Everything is assembled like you would, and it still spins by hand. It was a little tight at first, but after a few revolutions, it's easier and easier. But you know, if this was in your truck and you were in a competition or you were on a trail ride and you fell off and hit something on the end, you know, it took a spill off of a 20-foot cliff or whatever, it wouldn't end your day. You know, you would still be able to be running this housing, and, you know, in your truck without having to do anything to it to fix it. So, you know, if you were running a cheaper grade housing and the portal box snapped off, that would end your day. It would end your competition, it would end your trail ride, whatever. So we're just showing you that, you know, spending a little bit more money on, you know, a quality housing made out of 7075 aluminum instead of cast aluminum, or cast pot metal is, I guess, a better terminology for this, because, you know, this thing is thick and heavy, and it took a lot of force to get this housing to actually snap. But we weren't shock loading it. If you're shock loading it, that would make this fail much easier, and it shows that on the test. We put this in the vise and hit on the end of the portal box with the hammer. Put it in the vise like this and hit on it with a hammer, and it took one medium hit and this thing went flying out across the shop. We put the other housing that we tested in the hydraulic vise. We had the hydraulic vise set up, or hydraulic press set up, excuse me, to push down on this other SuperShafty housing, and it took about 1,000 pounds of force to get it to crack. And it cracked here at the center. It didn't fail like this. It didn't fail like this until we put it in the vise and started beating on it. But to try and get the portal boxes off. And then it failed at the crack before the portal box broke off. But we didn't show that video in here because it's kind of hard to see the dial on the hydraulic press, and it didn't rotate a whole lot like we expected it might. The dial on the hydraulic press goes up to 100,000 pounds of force, and we didn't come anywhere close to that. We barely moved the dial. And I just didn't realize how not precise that dial was when we started that test, which is why I omitted the video from this. But anyway, I digress. This one we put in the vise and started beating on this with oh, we gotta turn that off. All right, we put this broken housing in the vise and started beating on it, and it took quite a substantial amount of abuse before this portal box broke off of the housing. And I've included that video in this video to show you guys that. I took a bunch of little videos and I'm in the process of piecing them together for you, but I just wanted to summarize. So take it for what it's worth. Don't take it at all. Take it for, everything. I don't care. This was fun for me to do, and hopefully it was fun for you guys to watch, and a little bit informative, and take it for what it's worth. All right. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. It was fun to do this testing, and hopefully you learned something and understand why it makes sense to buy a slightly more expensive housing made out of quality materials instead of a cheap housing. All right. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.